somebody said, let's raise minimum wage to $15 an hour. And I'm like, I understand in theory what you're saying. You want this person to make 15 an hour, but do you want to go to the store and pay $10 for a loaf of bread and $10 for a gallon of milk? I mean, come on, man. It's somebody has to pay the bill, and the small business owner is going to abide by the law. They're going to pay the 15 an hour, but they're going to go up on their rates of all the stuff you're buying. And that's what's happened in the banks. And that's how we saw it coming, because of the inflation and because of what was happening in the money cycle.
All right. Coming up next year on The Word on Wealth, we got more of Anthony. So keep listening up. I'll find out all about your money here on The Word on Wealth.
One retired. Your free book is waiting for you. Go to BibleSafeInvesting.com and be sure that you listen to Faith-Based Investing this weekend right here on Family Car.
Gary, your team at GQ Law are experts at solving IRS and state tax problems. Talk about that.
When people have a tax problem, it tends to really stress them out. And one of the things we've been able to do is figure out how to resolve tax problems. One thing we might be doing is setting up a payment plan or getting a collection delay, maybe getting a determination that the person shouldn't have to pay the taxes at all. We do offers and compromise. We do audit reconsiderations. And one of the things that's a really powerful tool that some people don't recognize is sometimes bankruptcy can be used to actually eliminate taxes when there's certain conditions of the code that are met. So we can do all kinds of things. After we analyze your situation, we can figure out what's available, discuss your options, and figure out which ones to implement, what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take. And we can get people out from under all kinds of tax problems so they can sleep again. That's our goal.
Request your free initial consultation. GQLaw.com, 855-500-TRUST, GQLaw.com.
Who will you trust with the biggest financial decision of your lifetime? If you're planning to buy or sell a home in San Diego County, do what I do and work with the true San Diego real estate experts. Ken Pecos and the Pecos Group helped me and my family. They can help you. This is Gary Quackenbush of The Word on Wealth. You hear Ken every week here on The Word on Wealth. He's our expert. He's got integrity, exceptional service, deep knowledge of the San Diego, Coronado, and South Bay regions. These are just some of the reasons that Ken Pecos has completed hundreds of transactions. He manages a powerful team of professionals at the Pecos Group. From single-family attached homes to luxury high-value waterfront properties to apartment buildings, Ken Pecos is ready to help you avoid problems and costly mistakes. Learn more online at kenpecos.com. That's Ken Pecos, Pecus.com. Or call 619-977-8419.
DRE number 010566969, brokered by eXp Realty.
Take your investment knowledge to new
Tell a friend about this broadcast outreach, The Word on Wealth, with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Call or click to request your free initial consultation or to talk with a member of the team. Call Gary at 855-500-TRUST. GQLaw.com.
Right.
You are listening to The Word on Wealth. This is Gary Quackenbush. We're here with Anthony Wealth. Is that great? Anthony Wealth. I just renamed you. Sorry.
I like that.
Yes.
I like that. Yes.
Anthony Wealth Wright. That's probably your middle name.
I like
isn't
that.
it? You know, I'd heard, this was talking to Ken yesterday when we were on the show. We were talking about the financial markets and the U.S. drops. I mean, he's always concerned about how the housing inventory goes up and down and the rates go up and down and when to be in the market. And that's super fun. But the one thing that he was mentioning is that when Moody's goes and cuts the rating of U.S. banks, is it's not all banks. It's just the mid ones, the Zions and Citizens and the mid-level banks. It doesn't really affect the big ones like, Chase and B of A and all that. So his take on it was like, we're not worried, which I thought was really interesting. And yours is very similar. It's like, well, we're not in that industry anyway. We saw that coming 4 years ago. So it's like, we don't mess with it. I'm wondering, when you're setting up like risk tolerance for your clients and trying to figure out, where people are, like where they are financially and where they are, like the understanding of the market kind of helps people determine risk tolerance and all that. Do you kind of go by segments of people? Like you say, okay, you are retirement age. And so just in general, you have less time, you have to be less risky because you're retirement age. And if you're really super young, you can just risk it all. And if you're mid, you kind of is that kind of an analysis, or is it more of an individual, like what the person is capable of understanding and what their tolerance for risk is?
It's more of an individual, what their personal risk and tolerance is. Just kind of as a starting place, we always start with what's called the rule of 100. So you just take 100 minus that person's age. So 100 minus a 25-year-old is 75. So 75% would be the risk score that you can use on that 25-year-old. So they can sustain quite a bit of risk. Now, that's not the Bible, so to speak, but that's where we start. So, you take 100 minus a 75-year-old. Now you're down to 25%. That's very little risk. So that's kind of where we start, is the rule of 100. And then from there, say you got a 60-year-old, 100 minus 60 is 40. So you would kind of want to say, okay, you're about 40%. What's the rest of your portfolio look like that we don't manage? And so they said, well, this other part over here, it's all in equities and it's extremely risky. Then we're going to come back and we're going to be very conservative on our side. If they say, well, it's in T-bonds or T-bills or T-notes, or, it's very conservative and we've got it in, just a lot of conservative, then we may take a little more of a moderate approach. So we kind of use the rule of 100 just to kind of get us started. And then from there, we'll start asking questions about what's the rest of the portfolio in, and we'll make some decisions from there.
It's interesting. It teaches me two things. One is, and this is something that we've had a conversation on this a couple of times, is if somebody wanted to get involved with Retirement Specialty Group with Anthony Wright, does Anthony say, okay, give me all of your money and I'll work with you? Or does Anthony say, how much money would you like me to manage for you? And I think we got that answer. Anthony doesn't mind being, not the exclusive money manager for somebody, which I think is really cool. Because I mean, some people in trying to switch, and Anthony, I talked to several people about this. They say, well, we've already got our money over at Schwab and it's in this mutual fund and we're okay with it because it's doing, 6%. And so we're okay with that. I said, well, you really should try Anthony if that's all you're doing. And then their concern is, well, does that mean I got to tell my advisor that Anthony's going to take all of my money or manage all my money over at Retirement Specialty Group? And I say, no, it's not. It's a piece. It's a piece thing. Anthony would love to manage all of your money. but that's not one of his required criteria. So I love how you're talking about that, where you do have a risk score, but it's like kind of overall. And it would seem then also that you're not only looking at what that particular account that you're managing does, but you're looking at, does this person have real estate holdings? What's this person's source of income? Is he on Social Security, retirement? What other money sitting around? Is there other resources, so that you can then readjust with that conversation with them? You can readjust what their kind of overall risk tolerance is, rather than just having this myopic view of, well, I'm managing this one account for them and the risk tolerance is based only on this account. Did I have that right?
Oh, you're spot on. 100%.
Okay.
That's exactly the way we are. Yeah. We don't look, whatever you want us to work with, we'll be happy to work with you. And, our goal and our aim is that as we begin to work with you, quite honestly, Gary, a lot of times it's kind of a setback when you work with an investment advisor that is aggressive, and because so many people are accustomed to hearing from their advisor once a year if they're lucky, once maybe every 6 months if you call them. But then sometimes you work with an aggressive advisor, and you're kind of like, whoa, what? Hey, whoa, hang on, what? Yeah, it's just, things are happening, right? So and then hopefully we do a good job to where they go, wow, I see such a difference over here working with Anthony and his team, that no, he hasn't asked us to move it over there, but I think it's in our best interest that we move it over there because of the performance and because we're happy with their customer service.
That's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that. I mean, I don't want to get too personal, but I get a lot of emails every day. I think most people do, especially businessmen. And it's like, I get all these emails, and it's the early in the month, that type of thing. And so you get these things going, your statement is ready to review, log in and review your statement. I get that with these investment places and all, where I've got things going. But then I'm getting these other emails, and it's talking about adjustments. And I go, who is adjusting my portfolio? Of course I know who it is, but so I look at it, and one of the in trade confirmations, there's always this kind of almost code, this is what was bought. It has funny names for stuff. And so I'm just looking through it really fast, and it says something Christian. I went, oh, that's Anthony. Sure enough, I click in and I go, dude, you crushed it for me last month. It was really fun. Anyway, but you're right. And the difference, my personal experience has been very much like you said. I mean, I've had financial advisors for years, and it's like, hey, log in anytime you want, look at your account. And I do. And I go, okay, there's numbers, there's red and there's green. And okay.
Real exciting. And
yeah, it's but then I keep getting, contact from your people hey, Gary, you call me for a second. And it's your, one of your assistants, Gary, Anthony wanted me to find out this. And did you see what happened here? And we want to move this, and we're not quite done with that. We want to make this different. And I'm going gosh, you guys are just all over it all the time. And I just think that's what I try to tell people, is that it's a very different experience when you work with a financial advisor that really does their job. I mean, and really works through it. And it's not based on the number of trades. It's not based on anything. It's still a fee-based financial planning firm that does this comprehensive plan. And that's what I really enjoyed about it. So, I mean, that's my, patting Anthony on the back, and his team is saying, gee whiz, thank what you're doing for me. But that's why I have you on the show. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Hey, I've got something, and I'm always kind of because I'm kind of the investor guy that will see what my advisor's doing and then kind of say, okay, thumbs up, that's working good. And I really like to trust people. But every time you turn on the news, there's always something alarming. And it's oh no, should this affect me? There was this just very recent, it was even today, I think it was this morning, they're saying the Fed's thinking again, about something or other. And I'm wondering, did the market start to dance and, shuck and jive with stuff like that? And then do world events affect the stock market? The Hawaii fire is it's alarmingly terrifying because it's Hawaii, and probably everybody knows that little town in Hawaii, Lahaina, but it's Does that stuff affect the world economy? Does that affect the stock market? Do things move with that, or do we just watch with bated breath and hope that things are okay? You know what I mean? Does that stuff affect money events or
Not
money
really.
markets?
It really don't. What affects the stock market more than anything is the VIX index, which is the monitoring of the fear of people. And you kind of hit the nail on the head here when you said, you turn the news on and it's just constantly negative, negative, negative. And one of the biggest things that we are always preaching, so to speak, to our clients is don't expect us to make emotional decisions. Okay. That's not what we get paid to do. We get paid to be professionals, know what we're doing, know how to make our clients money, stay calm, and make level-headed decisions. So one of the worst things you can do, see, that's Gary, people don't understand that's what happened in 29, the Great Depression, 1928, 29, the Great Depression was the media just spread fear into everybody. And so there was a run on the banks because everybody ran to the bank and wanted to get their money out. Well, people don't understand that if every single banking customer went tomorrow to your bank,
Take 2 minutes.
they don't have it. They've loaned it to other people. So they're paying, they're making money with your money. They don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to understand that as an investment advisor, that we stay level-headed, that we don't get emotional, and we can't. Okay, we just can't. We have to stay level-headed and not let those world events shake us. So we go a lot based on history. We go a lot based on analytics. We go a lot based on our spirit, our gut, our feeling, and our professionalism. And most of the time, we do a pretty darn good job of it. Now, occasionally things will go against us the different way than what we had thought we would go, but then we try to catch ourselves with a stop loss.
A minute.
Mm-hmm.
Catch ourselves by putting an option in place. So it's important to not let those worldly events and not let the news media scare you and shake you.
Okay. And then along that, so really, I think that's kind of the Anthony pep talk that we always get, weekly here on the Word on Wealth. And I so much appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing for our clients, for our listeners. I think that's really terrific what you're doing. Anthony, faith-based advisor here. He's got his website is BibleSafeInvesting.com. His number is 931-RETIRED. Anything to do with your money, your investments, your retirement account, you only need one number. I'm serious. 931-RETIRED, RETIRED, 931-RETIRED, BibleSafeInvesting.com. Anthony, I really always appreciate having you on. It makes me feel so much better about my world and my money and retirement. And I really appreciate it, man. Thank you. And I'll talk
I
to you next week.
appreciate you, my friend. Say hello to your lovely bride. Hello to your family. You guys have a great week.
Thanks, Anthony.
See ya. Bye-bye.
You don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to find answers you can trust when you need them. Welcome to the Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush. We're here to help you build, protect, and transfer everything you've worked hard for with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary and the team at gqlaw.com, 855-500-TRUST. Call or click to request your free consultation or to talk with a member of the GQ team. That's gqlaw.com. 855-5.
Go on.
We are listening to The Word on Wealth. Here we are together, just sailing along right to the top of the hour. If you've got questions for me, your attorney, Gary Quackenbush, the number is 888-344-1170. Call. And if you've got questions about wills, trust, power of attorneys, give me a call and I'm happy to help you out, answer your question. If you want a personal consultation with me, the initial consultation, the first 30 minutes is no charge, complimentary, gratis, free. And the number is 855-500-TRUST, TRUST, 855-500-TRUST. Get your appointment, come in and see me. I want to say how grateful I am that I've had so many of our listeners call up so respectfully. They'll come in, we'll meet with them, review their trusts. I'll give them my opinion on things that should be changed or maybe don't need to be changed. We're talking about the information that we're sharing here on the air. And I really enjoy when I get one of our listeners that will come in and say, hey, listen to your show. And I had a question about this that you were talking about, or I'm wondering if this affects me. As far as money advice, and I do get people that are asking that as well, like, Gary, I'm inheriting money and I'm not sure exactly what to do. I don't know whether to get into real estate or I want to get into into a brokerage account. What do I do? And I always have that's a pretty easy one for me. There's two responses. I am a guy that trusts advisors. I mean, when I need help, I hire an attorney. Okay. I am a estate planning attorney. I do trust settlements and trust litigation and all that. However, if I have a personal issue with a trust, my own trust, my family trust, I hire an attorney because I want.
Speaking of help,
advice.
Elaine from Escondido has a question for some help, Gary. She's ready to go.
All right. Hi, this is Gary Quackenbush on The Word on Wealth. Welcome.
Hi, Gary. My husband, his father passed away about 3 years ago, and he has a stepmother. There's 4 children born to his father, and one was with the stepmother who lived on after his father passed away. Anyway, he was a co-executor with his brother, the son of the stepmother, and when the father died. But all of a sudden, stepmom died, and now my husband is completely out of the will. And I just wondered if there's any recourse, anything he should check on to make sure everything is like okay. How can that happen?
That's a really good question, and it depends on the documents. Like, what did your husband receive to indicate that he had been wasn't in the will or wasn't in the trust any longer? Was he given some type of notification?
Yeah, the half brother said that his mother left everything to him and a little bit of money to the other 2 siblings, but nothing to him because she figured that he didn't need anything.
Well, there's going to have to be documentation to prove that that was her intent. It can't just be that his half brother calls him up and says, hey, sorry, you're not getting any money because she told me I could have it all. There's always got to be documentation, valid, legitimate, legally supported documentation to prove that that was her intention. So
But how do we get that?
Well,
but how do we?
Yeah, it's going to have to be, ultimately it's going to be a demand that, prove it, because the thing is that the money, there's going to be money from stepmom going somewhere, right? Going to, and we're saying to the half brother and the money's going to have to be transferring somehow. A lot of that money is going to have to go through some legal process, whether it's probate or whether there's a trust that's providing that. So what we would be doing is demanding that the half brother that's saying, sorry, you got cut out, prove it. I want the documents. I want the will. And if they don't provide the will, it's simple enough to go down and get a judge to get an order demanding that will be provided, because they can't just say you're not getting any money. I mean, there should be money depending on, as we can talk to the whole situation, but if he's not getting anything, and stepbrother's giving a reason, it's like, prove it to me. Where's the paperwork that says that? And it can't just be, well, you know, before she passed, she just said, yep, you take it all. Don't give any of that to your stepbrother or to your half brother.
But let's just say that she did change the trust, because it was originally a trust that she and my husband's father, you know, did together. But as soon as he died, she said she went down and changed the house and put it in her name. So, you know, she can do that, I guess, because now it's hers when he's gone, right?
It depends, because if the house was in a trust, and if the trust, we'd need to figure out whether the trust became irrevocable when your husband's dad died, because sometimes it becomes irrevocable and she can't change it. So just because she filed paperwork, just because she did a deed, just because she did that, doesn't mean it was legal, doesn't mean it was legitimate, doesn't mean it was valid, because it's going to be depending on what your husband's dad's trust said, and he should get a copy of that. He's entitled to it by law. He's entitled to get a copy. And if there's changes, it's like, okay, show me the changes. And then if there's a question on whether the changes were valid or whether they are legitimately created or whether it's done under the right circumstances, that all can be looked at and questioned. And I'm not talking necessarily about contesting the trust. It's getting the information to prove what they're doing is legal. And if it is, then you can kind of look at, if the documents look like they're all in order, then maybe it's time to say, okay, oh, well. But if they're not all in order and they're suspicious, then that's not something we should let sit.
Yeah. That's what I feel like, is that he just needs to look into it further and just make sure that it's all what it appears.
Exactly.
Okay. Well,
Exactly.
we may need to give you a call if you could help us further. Thank you so much for your show and for your assistance.
You're welcome. Happy to help you out. Yeah. Let me know if I can help you. Just call me offline and I'll be able to take care of it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for calling. Really appreciate it. We got lines open. We got a couple more open. We can take some calls right between now and the top of the hour. We're going to be going straight through the show. The number is 855. No, the number to call to talk to me on the show is 888-344-1170, 888-344-1170. Call me, ask me a question. And I really appreciate our last caller from Escondido. Great question. Does that happen? It happens all the time, man. This stuff happens all the time. So 888-344-1170, ask me your question. I'll bet you when you ask, you're not going to be the only one that had that question. All right. So along the lines of our wonderful caller, what if the mom and dad pass away and you are the successor trustee and you're going through the paperwork, and it's a blended family, which is super common now. I mean, like 70% of families are blended now. It's like way over half. Blended meaning the married couple that just died didn't have all their children in common. Maybe husband had some kids, or maybe wife did, or vice versa. And then they may have a common child or not. So in all those situations, the successor trustee, let's say, is taking over, and now the successor trustee's job is to determine who the beneficiaries are. So they look through the trust, and the trust says, I'm giving this much money to this person, I'm giving money to this person, I'm giving a share to this person. And lo and behold, there's a beneficiary that cannot be found. What do? Well, we had a situation years ago, and it was very similar to what I'm explaining. And what had happened is the will said that the trust said that it says, I give my ruby ring. It's a gold ring, ruby, with had little diamond rings around it, or little diamonds around the ruby in ring shape. You know what I mean? So it's like ruby in the middle, little diamonds around it. It's on a gold ring, and that was going to go to, and we'll just say Deborah, and it had a last name. So we were looking at that, and the person that brought the trust into me, the trust was really old, and they brought it in and said, I'm not exactly sure, but I think this Deborah was the housekeeper for my mom, but I'm not sure. So we should go find that out. So anyways, looked at the last name, we tried to figure it out, couldn't find anybody on the internet. But we had that ring. The question is, could that trustee have just said, forget it, I'm just going to sell the ring and I'm going to give it to the other beneficiaries? Or what was the trustee's responsibility? So we're going to talk about that. And this is an important one, the answer I'm going to give you. If you can't find a beneficiary that's named in the trust, it's a person that existed at some time. What can you do? Can you just ignore them? And I'm going to talk about the solution coming up next, right here on The Word on Wealth. My number directly to me, to call me, to ask me questions off the air, it's 855-500-TRUST. I'd be happy to talk to you about the stuff in confidence. 855-500-TRUST. You get your free initial consultation if you've mentioned that you are one of our listeners on the show. And to be part of the show, coming up, you can call 888-344-1170. All right, coming up next, what about this beneficiary that we couldn't find? Right here on The Word on Wealth.
You've got questions. We've got answers. This is The Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Gary's here to give you peace of mind with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary to build, protect, and transfer your wealth. 855-500-TRUST. GQlaw.com.
Gary, how do you and your team help our listeners avoid probate?
Well, first of all, probate is a process that involves attorneys, judges, and sometimes contesting parties. And so we try to avoid probate at pretty much all costs. The way we do that is setting up living trusts, setting up properly documented wills, putting the property like houses, cars, bank accounts in that trust so that it avoids probate. Probate is only necessary if the estate plan isn't set up quite right. So we help them get it set up right. And mainly that's done through a properly created living trust.
Call Gary and the team at GQ Law, 855-500-TRUST, or go online and download Gary's free ebooks and videos. Read Gary's blogs. Call or click to request your free initial consultation. That's GQlaw.com, 855-500-TRUST.
What aren't we being told about the COVID-19 scenario?
The Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Call or click to request your free initial consultation or to talk with a member of the team. Call Gary at 855-500-TRUST. GQlaw.com.
You're live.
Good to be here. All right. I'm answering a question here on The Word on Wealth. And the question that came up was, what if you can't find a beneficiary? Now, this is going to affect you if you are the successor trustee, if you are the executor of a will or the successor trustee of a trust, and you're trying to do the distribution, trying to figure out who gets money, and you can't find a beneficiary. All right. So the scenario that I'm telling is that we have somebody, and in her trust, she said, my ruby ring goes to Deborah. Okay. We'll say Deborah Jones. So we can't find Deborah Jones locally. Nobody knows who Deborah Jones is. The trust is really old. It's probably 20 years old, and we can't find this person. One of the beneficiaries says, hey, it seems to me that grandma had a housekeeper whose name was Deborah. So we could not find it specifically. We ended up finding out what the person's name actually was, hired a private investigator, and the the way private investigators find people, to me, it was astounding. They ended up tracking her down. They found out, they got her whole name. They figured that out. They figured out where she used to live. They figured out where she used to work. Then she contacted the place where she used to work and somehow got them to say, oh, I think she moved to Georgia, somewhere in, some town in Georgia, like the capital. I don't know. So the private investigator then looked up and tried to figure out where would this person named Deborah Jones that was in San Diego now moved back to Georgia, and actually found a list of people that would match the description of this particular person and contacts them and asks specific questions that would help them understand where this person was. Well, we found out found the person. They gave me the information. We contacted her and said, hey, you're in the trust of so-and-so, and she is giving you this gold ruby ring. And they were shocked. It's like, whoa, that was years ago. I worked for her. What do I do now? We said, well, do you want us to ship you the ring? Because we're happy to do that. Or would you like us to sell it? And she said, dun, 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 what do you think? Voting, of course. She said, please sell it and send me the cash. So we did. It was like $1,580, I think is what it was. So we went to a jeweler, sold it, wrote her a check and sent it. Okay. That was a beneficiary that could be found. What if we could never find Debbie Jones? Great question. So if we couldn't find Deborah Jones, is it okay for the successor trustee to just sell that jewelry and give it to the rest of the beneficiaries? The answer is no, because they were named in the trust. So there's a successor trustee now is going to have to figure out who she is, if she even existed. So if it's a bad name and we just can't figure it out, then that's a different story. But we had to figure out, and let's say we could not find Debbie Jones at all. We would have to turn that ring over to the state of California. And it's going to go into the unclaimed property division in the state of California. And then eventually somebody's going to figure that out. They're going to get the inventory of the new unclaimed property, and they're going to go do all the research and find that person, and the super expert sleuth people, and somebody's going to find her and say, hey, we think we have some money for you or whatever. But that's the way those lost unclaimed items go. So you'd have to find them. We had a situation where we couldn't find the person, and then we figured out where we thought they would be, and they were in a center where the center was not allowed to say anything about the people that lived there. So we knew that's where the person was, and the center refused to tell us, yes, they're there, or no, they're not there. We basically were sending contact and communication to that center and saying, this person is going to receive some money, but we need to know if that person is there. And if they are, then we want to be able to send them money. And they still refused. But you can send them mail. And if they don't respond, oh well. But we really had to either prove that they were dead, or we had to turn over the money to the state. So it kind of stinks. When you're doing, let's see, what's the moral of the story? If you're giving away specific items of personal property, make sure you're giving them away to a person who you will keep track of. And if you're going to give it to your housekeeper, your yard person, or somebody that is just your friend at the time, and you think, I want them to have this thing, if you lose contact with them, make sure you change your trust so that it doesn't go to that person. The way I do that in my estate plans is I set up the will that works with the trust, and the will has a section in it that says that you can create a list or schedule of assets that shows the distribution of those particular items of personal property, i.e. the ring. So if it were an estate plan that I set up, there would be a schedule that you would create. It would basically say ruby, gold ring, ruby, diamonds circling the ruby is going to go to Debbie Jones. And you can update that list anytime. You're going to sign it and you're going to put that with the will because the will asks for that list. And if you change your mind because you lose track because now Debbie Jones works for somebody else, you tear up that schedule and you make a new one. And the new one says, give that ring to Susie Brown because she's my new favorite person. So you can change the distribution of certain items or personal property, the little stuff. You can change it anytime you want without having your attorney involved. And it's called or referred to as a personal property list or a letter of direction. So if it's little stuff like that, you can actually just determine where it goes by having that letter or schedule created by you, signed by you, and put with your will, as long as the will references that letter. You can't just stick it with the will. You can't, if you do a handwritten will or something like that, it's just not going to be the same thing. You want to work it where there's a schedule where the will references for you, the executor, to look for the schedule. That's usually the best way to do it. All right. Beneficiaries have to be found. We had a situation where there was money was given to a person who died, and he died way before my client died. So my client ended up dying, and then his kids came in and said, okay, we want you to help out with distributing property. And lo and behold, the documentation that this person had was so messed up because it just named a family. I'm going to give my money to so-and-so. Okay, well, that person was dead. And so now we had to determine that person's heirs and who were his issue. Did he have children? And yes, he did. He was an old guy, but he had children. So we got to figure out who the children were, because they now get notification that, this guy was listed in this document and now that person is dead. So we now got to track him down. So it went through this big process of tracking him down. We've had trusts where somebody wasn't sure what the name was. And so they said, just give it to all of my cousins or give money to all of my great grandchildren, just kind of generic terms like that. And then, 30 years later, they die and there's just a big, huge mess. You're trying to go, wait, it's grandchildren. Is that grands and great grands and great great grands, or is that just single grands? What does that mean? So you got to be careful with stuff like that. Just if you're saying to my grandchildren, does that include great grandchildren, or is it just grandchildren? You got to be specific, or else we're going to assume that it means great grands also. So anybody grand, whether it's great grand, or great great grand, we're going to say, well, those are all grand and happy, and they're all going to be getting money. So time to be specific. If you're working with that, read through your trust. My suggestion, if you have a trust, is read through it and find the main parts you're going to find are who is in charge. Read the stuff about the trustee and the successor trustee. Anything that says trustee, successor trustee, whatever, read that stuff, that section. And then mainly read the distribution that will say, some trusts are not as clear on this, but it'll say basically, when I am dead, give my money to these people. That's the section that you really want to pay attention to, because the amendments that I do typically involve the distribution section. What's going to happen to my money after I die? And we're making the changes to that because now the money, they don't want it to go to their children anymore. They want it to go to their grandchildren or great grandchildren, depending on age. And sometimes we're, making those adjustments. And that's kind of the number one thing that we're doing on changes is distribution. The number two is people. Who's in charge? Who's the successor trustee? Who is the executor of the will? Who's going to be the listed, the financial power of attorney? So those are kind of that's the second group of things. So amendments are typically, we're changing the distribution, or we're changing the people that are helping manage the trust and the trust money. Okay. And sometimes we'll do an amendment based on law changes. The law doesn't change a lot. I mean, I look at it, the law changed quite a bit in 2010. It changed quite a bit again in 2015, but it's been about 8 years since things have been changing. Now in 2026, January 2026, there's going to be some enormous law changes in estate planning having to do with how much money you can give away without being taxed. Right now, you can give away a huge amount of money, like $12.5 million. And after 2020, in 2026, it's going to be, the amount's going to drop down to 500,000 or 600,000, or 5 or 6 million. So it's going to drop a lot, and some people that will affect. So look at the size of your estate, come in and talk about it. If you don't have an estate plan, please stop waiting, get it done. It's not as expensive or as difficult as you think. Call us at 855-500-TRUST. If you want to review what you got, 855-500-TRUST. This is Gary Quackenbush on the Word on Wealth. Tomorrow's Field Finding Joy Friday here on the Word on Wealth. We will find joy together.
Tell a friend about the Word on Wealth, featured since 1995, with financial solutions attorney Gary Quackenbush, an expert in estate planning, wills and trusts, and tax problem solving. Gary is past president of the California Society of Tax Consultants. Reach out to us. The Word on Wealth team of financial experts is here to answer your questions and help preserve your family's financial future.
All right. See you down there, bud.
Okay.
Information you
See you in a
hear
bit.
on the Word on Wealth.